Hello, everybody. Thank you for tuning in for the second episode of Success Snaps, a series of talks between friends where we try to be mindful about different ways of living a meaningful life. Today, I have with me another person that I appreciate deeply, a person whose resilience, empathy, and kindness never ceases to amaze me. What I appreciate even more is her intensity and her incredible engagement in creating this episode with me. We're gonna discuss today the importance of a loving childhood, the importance of gratitude, of meditation, and how relationships can shape and change our lives, the power of hard work, mindfulness, and many more. So let me introduce you today to my guest and my friend Zulfiya Akbarova.
Hey everyone, thank you Vic for kind introduction. So my name is Zulfiya. I'm from original Uzbekistan, but now I live in Boston area. I work in data analytics and absolutely love the field. I see it more as how do we use the data to solve everyday problems, so business problems, or just do the better approach to the most efficient approach to answer the important questions that we have. So yes, and I love it.
I'm happy to hear that. And before continuing, I just want to share the story of how we met. And because we both know that there were some incredible circumstances and some incredible luck. So I got this gift of a Tony Robbins ticket at his event in New Jersey. And we happened to both go at the same event. And we met during the event, and we sit next to each other in the same zone. I believe it was 107 in the same sector. And it's funny because I moved my place just a few minutes before starting, as where I was sitting before that was getting too crowded. So we both ended up in sector 107. And honestly, that Tony Robbins experience was amazing. And it clearly shaped the way that I'm thinking right now. And a lot of my experiences afterwards were changed by it. So please, if you want to share with us a bit more about your work experience and your experience as a human in general.
Sure, absolutely. I was so happy that I attended that event. I think you and I instantly bonded, and just overall, made so many friends for that event. And still a lot of teachings, a lot of learnings with Tony Robbins, and just his idea of living still sticks with me till today, and I implement it as well every single day. So a couple of things about my just what I do. Again, as I mentioned, I work in data analytics and kind of changed the careers from around the same time when I went to Tony Robbins, because I was listening to his tapes and everything kind of motivated me to really pursue my passions. And I moved from accounting to data analytics. I mean, it was a step-by-step process, but now I love it. And it was, when you start something new or you have this idea, you don't even know because you've never tried it, but I just followed it, and I'm actually so happy that I did, because it's exactly what I wanted to. This is exactly what I should be doing. It's exactly my skill set, and it's great. So yeah, and my experience as a human, I think, again, with Tony Robbins and being on that path, I become more tuned as who I am and become more inquisitive, I guess, of who I am as a person and what qualities and what skills do I have and how can I serve the world with that. There's a great saying, every one of us has a gift, but the big thing is to know what your gift is and to give it away. And I really love that saying, because it really, after Tony Robbins and throughout the whole journey, actually, it's funny, you mentioned that. I found a notebook, from 10 to 10, 12 years ago, right before when I came to United States and during my first years in the United States, and I have the same writings that
Really?
I write myself now. Yeah, it's incredible. Like the same things that I would write, I would journal the same phrases, and I was reading through it. I'm like, oh my gosh, there's a saying, the more we change, the more we stay the same. That was so true. And I was just that person that's always wanted to kind of grow and trying to learn about myself, like, trying to acquire all these habits and basically be a better person, not for only myself, but also for my family and friends and the community that I live in. So it was always kind of growing that direction. It was funny to see that.
I completely agree. And what I love from your answer is the fact that you took basically small increments. You took small steps in changing. And yeah, I mean, you can say that you had a massive change of careers, but you didn't rush into anything. You didn't say at some point, you know what, I'm going to try 10 different careers now and see whichever one sticks. So you took everything basically incrementally. And I can understand where this is coming from. I can understand the whole idea of trial and error. But I also love that you were mindful throughout this whole process. And I think the fact that you mentioned journaling is really important, because I do the same. And it's not that kind of journaling that I used to do maybe when I was a teenager or something, but it's some sort of a mind dump. So anything that I have on my brain, I'm either recording myself or I'm writing down, because otherwise it gets stuck in my head. And it's way better to be in someplace else, because then I can listen to it later, or I can read it later and see if I was right or wrong. And another thing that I got from what you were saying was the importance of family. And I want to briefly discuss the importance of a loving childhood and the relationships in general. I think that's, a stepping stone in our lives, and I think that defines us. And I think you're a very happy person in general. I mean, you you are always such a high energy person. So I was thinking, how did your relationship with the family, or how did your upbringing shape you? How did it shape your vision of life?
Sure. I think one person, when it comes to my mind every time when I think of my childhood, is my grandma. And I think she is she kind of like everything that I have, the good in me, I associate with her. She's like my main big person. My grandma, I love this. Yeah, because my grandma, so ever since I was a kid, like when I think of my childhood, all I think of like piggyback to my grandma, going to the grocery stores, like grocery markets. And my grandma was the best negotiator. She would like, at that time in Uzbekistan, basically my grandma, she lived in a village, and she spoke Russian. And then, she also spoke Uzbek, and she also spoke Kazakh, so 3 languages. And you would not believe it. She would go to the market and she would find people that speak Russian, so she speaks Russian to them. Then she would go to the market, and then somebody that she buys meat from would be like Uzbek, and she would she'd speak to him very nicely and very sweetly, and like throw jokes at him, make him comfortable. Like she built a rapport, right? That's what she used to. That's what she did. She built a rapport with each person. And and then like all my childhood is like piggybacks, going to visit her friends, getting ice cream and like riding the bus together, and just constantly hanging out with her. And I think she was such a people lover, and but let me also point out the bravery of my grandma. My grandma at that time, after the World War II, reselling goods was a criminal act, was prohibited. You could not just like how you do right now, you buy items from wholesale and then you go and resale to the individual consumers. You couldn't do that. That was illegal. But she had to survive because she had 5 kids to feed, and she had a brother that she wanted to help to put through school. So my grandma is incredible. She decides to export tomatoes because Uzbekistan is very rich in soil. We have a great weather, so we have all 4 seasons, and our vegetables are just amazing. So she takes the tomatoes, grows them, and then she exports them to Belarus, basically to another country. And she somehow builds a connection with a conductor of the train, like gives him a little bit of money, finds a person in Belarus that will take her goods and sell it. And she would do this. I mean, she did it for a couple of years. I mean, how incredible that is. It's such a, when I think of my grandma and I think of her bravery, of her courage, how she had to do what she had to do to feed her family, to feed her kids. And I just have so much, I have such a great role models in my life that I just I cannot just be mediocre. Like, I have no excuses,
I love this, and I mean, the story is fascinating. So what I got from it was the fact that she managed to adapt her tone of voice and her reactions to every person that she was interacting with. I mean, that was extremely important, but also, and it's something that I also admire you for, it's the hustle. Like, honestly, you hustle way more than I do. And I think you've got this from her because, she had to find a way, right?
Yeah.
It wasn't like an option to just sit there and maybe hope that the government is gonna offer something. No, she just had to do something. So I think, it's very important to see where you're coming from. It's very important to see that maybe you've got some positive traits from the people that you grew up with, right? Because the same, like, I've got the power of will. I've got it from my mom. Like, she's a very powerful person in general, and she worked very, very hard. I mean, I'm not working half as hard as her, but it's still very interesting to see where this kind of qualities can come from, right?
Yeah.
So I think there are different types of relationships, and it's very important to also understand, and maybe I want to go into some anecdotes here. It's very important to understand the different types of them. I mean, how toxic they are or not. And actually, I was speaking about this today, and I want to preface by this. I've been taught by my mother to never say no. And this is, well, something lovely, but at some point, your life is going to become really cluttered, right? So you need at some point to learn how to prioritize and how to go into saying, hey, this is important for me, or this can wait until next week. And then if you do that, you have to also turn different opportunities down and see, this is a quality that I still have to learn. And it's very important to understand maybe how the relationships with our parents shaped us, and if we have any sort of setbacks. Because, see, I've seen people who come from a place of lack and from a place of maybe not the best relationships. And there was this theory that if a child gets abused, then he's gonna become abusive. That doesn't work, because one reason: if that would be the truth, then all of us would abuse each other. And it's wonderful how some human beings, despite all adversity, they manage to conquer it, and they manage to, well, become amazing human beings eventually, right? And I know you wanted to discuss about the idea of, the path that it's been paved for you, maybe for by your parents, and the whole relationship with the parents, and how that can translate then in your actual relationships or your romantic partnerships. I know that's something that we discussed at some point, and I believe that's very interesting, and I know you have some really good points about that. So what are your thoughts on this?
Yes, absolutely. So although my childhood was amazing in terms of, like, my grandma, we had the best time together, we have best buddies, and I got a lot of love from her, a lot of just unconditional love, and from all of my uncles and aunts. I have a big huge family. I have first, like, only the 18 cousins, I guess, my first cousins and stuff. So it's overall, like, I had a lot of love in my life, from my family members. But my parents, actually, unfortunately, they did not have that love towards each other. I guess they didn't have the most loving relationships towards each other. I think because
it happens.
It happens. Exactly. It happens. Absolutely. So, and to your point, when we look at our parents' relationship, that's our first indicator of how romantic relationships should be. Because we as a kids, we take everything in. We're like a little sponge. And then you see that kind of subconsciously. You think, oh, okay, well, everybody kind of has a story. But then when you grow up, and you as an adult, you kind of start noticing how those patterns subconsciously affect how you build relationship, how you perceive your relationship, because you attract what's familiar. And I've gone through a lot of kind of self-help books, and because I love that a lot. I love growing and being better, but also kind of like looking at what I have and doing inventory of what I have. It's like, because everything that I have is what I built, right? Is coming from me. It's what I attracted. So, and one of the actually mentor that I liked is Marissa Peer and Luce Hay, and they do really talk about is you attract what's familiar to you. So because you've had that, right? You probably, whenever you meet a friend, you're like, oh, I can relate to you. You build a rapport, right? Oh, I can relate to you. Oh yeah, that's looks familiar. So all of a sudden you're like, oh, I feel like I've known you all my life, right? So
Exactly.
yes, exactly. So this could go good way, because it's like, yes, you can really build your tribe, but then also can kind of like, if you didn't have a really good experience like growing up seeing a really true love between your parents, then you like, oh, that feels familiar, so that familiar might not be really a good thing.
Yes.
So I think what I like is basically identifying it, seeing it, and not really running away from it, because a lot of times we try to numb that feeling, not really like kind of push it away, push on the covers. But I think really facing it, really embracing it, and saying, okay, how can I make this better? What doesn't really work? Like, what is great, for example, that was among like that what was really good about the relationship between my parents, and what was really not good, and then what's not good, and how am I attracting that? Because I found myself attracting not good part of their relationship. It's almost like one person pointed out to me, it's like we come as adult and we try to fix what we haven't seen when we were as a child, and that was like, oh wow, really? And that's when I was like, all right, stop, let's work on this.
Yeah, otherwise, like, the definition of insanity is to doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. Like, I love this quote so much.
Yes.
And I just want to jump in really fast.
Yes.
To say that, again, it's really important to see what kind of quality of the relationship they had, and to realize that it's, I mean, even though you can see the mistakes, you don't have to repeat them, right? That's the funny part. And maybe because you've been sort of conditioned to do this kind of things, maybe then automatically you're gonna look at a person. Let's say that the father he was cold towards the mother in a family.
Yeah.
And maybe your mother was cold towards you. Let's say that's the case. So if you're a guy, then you're gonna try and find a lady who is also cold towards you, because that somehow feels like the love that the mother denied you. And if she denies your love as well, then you're gonna feel attracted about that. And you have to realize, like, it's very tough to do so, because especially if you're a man, you're also very inclined to look at the physical appearance. That's a known fact. And if she also acts and behaves like one of your parents that maybe you craved love from, it's even more difficult to stop and say, you know what, this is not working, this is dysfunctional, because it's dysfunctional. And you don't want that kind of relationship. But maybe it happens to find yourself in the same pattern over and over again. And that's the thing that I love about you. And also the fact that you're always looking of ways of fixing this. And I mean, not necessarily this issue, but ways of fixing things, right? So you don't have this idea of giving up on things and letting them be as they are. You're always trying to fix things. And this is how I got to self-help as well. And, as you were saying, that's how you make friends, because you realize that they have some similarities to you, and you can start talking immediately. Because when we met each other, it wasn't weird. It just flew. Everything was completely normal. And it was like we knew each other for ages. And that's the beauty of it. You can find the people from the same tribe as yours, or the people who you can bond with really fast if you try to internalize some things, and if you try to find maybe your shortcomings, because every person has shortcomings, and I'm the first one, and I think each person should be the first one to acknowledge their shortcomings. And this is where mindfulness should come into practice, right? Because you were saying about the meditation, I think that meditation is really useful because now we don't have silence anymore.
Yeah.
So because we don't have the silence, we also don't get bored. But for example, I know this anecdote about Einstein. So how he come up with one of his laws, he was basically fishing, and he was fishing for like 12 hours, and he was basically bored out of his mind. But then he made some weird connection because he had his notebooks with him, and he was scribbling, he was fishing, he was scribbling again. And then after 12 hours of just sitting in the middle of a lake with nobody else on his boat, he came to the realization that he was doing something wrong. And then he spent 2 more hours and he created some of his laws. I don't know necessarily which one of those laws were, but actually this anecdote, I think it was told by him. So if you can imagine how many revelations that we're losing just by the fact that our attention is spanned everywhere, I think it's very important to try and, breathe. And as you were saying, use different meditations for different problems, because this can be a meditation that can lead to better knowledge of self. And if you're going in a relationship, you go there as a person who's already complete, not to find completeness in the other person, right? So you go there to share and to love the other person. I mean, that's just my view on relationships in general.
Absolutely. So I wanted to kind of point out a couple of things here, because, maybe you can relate to this, but I'm the person that I was always like, oh, I have a problem, let's fix it. Let's put everything together, all my resources, technical resources, emotional resources, everything, and fix it to get it better. But at the same time, when it came to my parents, right, because I wanted to, you constantly you can do this better, you can do this, you can do that. But I think what I'm trying to realize, trying to realize and implement now, acceptance. And I just wanted to actually talk a little bit more about acceptance. I think it's something that I'm coming more close to, the idea of accepting people as who they are, and being a person that's constantly on self-improvement journey, and you're oh, you have a problem, let's fix it, let's change our mindset, let's maybe think of this idea. But sometimes we only can change ourselves. We cannot change the other person. We cannot say, hey, you're going to be this way and then I will love you. I think what we could do is basically accept them who they are. And one of the things that I absolutely love is from Louise Hay, this meditation practice is when you close your eyes, you imagine a person in front of you, one of your parents, and you think of 3 things that you absolutely love about them, and you send that energy. I do believe in that energy that you send them. You know how on Instagram when somebody goes live, you see that little bubbles, little love hearts, and I literally, for some reason, every time I see those bubbles of love, just going to that person, and and really. And then another thing that's really good, I think it's forgiveness is a big one, and just closing your eyes and saying, I forgive you, please forgive me. And you inhale and exhale, and then you see that bubble coming to that person, kind of you inhale, and exhale that big bubble of heart, the heart shaped bubble basically coming to that person, and that person is doing the same, that bubble is coming to you. I think I just love that practice. It's really healing, because all of us have story, all of us. I mean, I've talked to so many of my friends that at some point of their life in childhood, they lacked the love from either of the parents, and why wouldn't she love me, or why didn't he love me? You would hear that in their conversation.
Yeah.
And I would just tell them well, there were reasons, maybe their dreams didn't come true, maybe they didn't get that love from their partner, and they really felt not happy. So maybe we should extend that compassion to them, and send that energy to them, and magic really happens. My relationship with my dad is just so much better. I call him, and I urge if there is an opportunity for us to call to our parents and really build that relationship, build that connection. My dad is not a great talker. This is what I wanted to tell you. Our conversation before used to be 1 minute, right? Now our conversations are 15 minutes. Imagine this, from 1 minute to 15 minutes. That's incredible, right?
It actually is. It's an exponential growth. I actually wanted to share an anecdote with you
Yeah.
about this sort of meditation of light. And people are going to listen to this and they're going to say it's woo, it's voodoo stuff. No. So what happens during the Tony Robbins experience, you're doing a Dickens pattern, right? I'm not sure if you remember it when we did it, but everybody, like there were like 20,000 people who were crying their hearts out.
Yes.
That was so intense. So when I was there and I was crewing and I was helping people, you know what they actually told us to do. So we had this meditation that we had to do beforehand, and for us to remain centered so that we can help the participants, because if you see people around you crying their heart out, like you don't have to interfere. That's the first step. You have to let them just do their own thing, and then maybe, I mean, only if somebody is obviously ill, you have to be there really fast to action. But what they told us to be was to stay in a very centered place and to just try to share as much love from inside us as possible towards them, to somehow channel them. And it's the power, like I'm not saying it's the power of light or whatever, I'm saying it's the power of thoughts and the amount of positivity and the amount of love. And again, like I was watching all of us in the crew, and the crew members were, you know, basically at the back of the room, and you could see each other's faces, like we were all smiling, and you could see how much love we had for the other participants. And those participants, like they were going through some dramatic changes, because that's how the pattern works. It's an NLP pattern, sorry, and it's very powerful for that matter. But that's the thing, like we were able to also assist because we were able to stay in that mind frame of just spreading the love. And I think that's really important. Again, I'm not saying this has to be something that you do daily, but as you were saying with that meditation of imagining the partner as a child, or there are different types of meditations, right? It's very powerful because it puts you in the position of the other person, and I think that's extremely powerful. Forgiveness comes from realizing that the other person did not necessarily mean to hurt you. And I want to end this topic with this idea that nobody is doing what they don't think it's the best for them, because it goes the same with dysfunctional people and with all the people in general, and with all the parents in general. Like the fact that they wanted, let's say, me or whatever, they say they wanted me to go to guitar lessons, right?
Yeah.
They wanted this because they thought it was the best idea ever at that point in time. Like each person does what he or she thinks it's best, and what he or she thinks it's gonna produce the most happiness, because that's how we function. Like we're more complicated apes, but we're still animals. If you think of it, like we still have the instincts, right? Like we wouldn't do something that causes us harm. It's just logic. So that's the thing you said about forgiveness, and I'm speaking about acceptance. I think even though, like, even in very dysfunctional relationships, even when the parents did things that would hinder the people when they are adults, I mean, they should take this as, you know, they tried their best. Like, you cannot change, as you were saying, you cannot change your parents, you cannot change anybody else other than you. The fact that you had a lover, let's say, that left you, I mean, that's on that person. It's not on you. It's that person's feelings who got changed, right? And you cannot force anybody into loving somebody else. And that's very important. So
I
I was
wanted
thinking,
to tell you something. I'm sorry to interrupt.
Sure.
You know, you meant, because I know you and I talked off the podcast, we're friends, right? We shared different ideas and stuff. And I know that's another thing that you just mentioned that I kind of didn't speak of a little bit, is the child, seeing your parent as a child's meditation. That's Louise Hay, and she talks about, you know, whenever you are upset with something, because your parents did not have the relationship that you wanted them to have, or were not, how you wanted them to be, to show you the love that how you wanted it, is like seeing your parents, seeing your parents as a children basically, and extending that compassion to them, seeing them as being like this scared person that they didn't get that love, they didn't know the best, they only knew the best they could, and you were so right to that point. Is like, we do the best we know, and I know that sometimes it's like, really, but like, yes, we act the best way we know, we do our best, and that is our best, and just accepting that is, I think, a huge relief and would help a lot in healing.
I think actually I'm sure that this can be disputed, but I believe this idea basically is at the basis of, all the Eastern philosophies. If you take Confucianism, if you take Buddhism, and Taoism as well, it's basically what those religions and trains of thoughts were built upon. The whole idea of self-acceptance and of improvement of how and what you can become, because I can never be Usain Bolt. Honestly, it's not me. I have to have some awareness of myself. And I want to, because we spoke about this topic of self-love, I want to speak a bit about a topic that I think it's very dear to my heart, because at many times I feel overwhelmed. So we discussed a bit about goal setting and about the workloads, and I know that you're doing so many things, and I actually appreciate you for that. I was wondering if you've got some sort of routine or some sort of structure that helps you not getting into that state, because at some point, really, because I tend to say yes to everything, then I get overwhelmed, right? So I was thinking if you got a structure that helps you achieve more in general.
Actually, it's interesting. So in our culture, right, the way I was growing up, you always say yes to things, you're always welcoming, you're always accommodating. And I started saying no to things now. So so I'm training myself to say no, because I'm trying not to be people pleaser, because I grew up with a lot of sense. You can't say no. You have to do, you have to put yourself as the last. And I think it's a great thing to live by. But sometimes, it gets overwhelming, and then you need to prioritize. So I started prioritizing things. Okay. So one of the things that I do is write down my goals in the morning. So I have my life goals. For each day, yes. But I also have my life goals. So I write down my life goals, my big goals that I want to achieve this year. And then I also write down the goals for this week, or if I'm doing today, what am I doing today to achieve that, basically, So it helps to break it down. So yeah, I absolutely agree. Actually, taking consideration the culture that I grew up in, my culture taught me always to say yes, be helpful, be kind, be generous, and it gets a little different now that I see this. I'm actually trying to say no, because I'm saying no to more stay focused on the goals that I've set for this year, and prioritizing things, because when you say yes, there are a lot of things coming at you. As you mentioned, it gets overwhelming, and then you find yourself and not achieving the things that you really need to achieve and really need to do. So one of the things that I do is basically write down my goals for the year, and then I break them down by quarter. So every day I write down my quarterly goals, and basically what do I do today, daily, to achieve those goals? Because then I see those quarterly goals right in front of me, and then I see where am I at to meet those goals. And it was really helpful. Last year I changed my job, actually, and I found and that was my quarterly goal. That was my Q4 of 2018 goal, and I achieved it. Every day I took the step in front of I took the step to get there, and every day I will write it down, get data analytics job, and I got it. And I got very nice bonus as well. So it's super. It just, and I put and I actually put the, and it's really nice to put also the kind of direction that you want to go to, and the word that you want to that you associate with that. So I actually got that reward, which is like funny, but I was looking at it every single day. I was like, I want this job and I want to get paid for this much. And I got exactly that, So I was like, this is great,
It's amazing because it keeps you going, right? Because you know that you've done something good, and it keeps reinforcing the idea that you're doing the right things.
Because there would be setbacks, for example, when you try to find a job, right, on a little scale, you get rejections,
I know.
but you get rejections, and I've gotten those, but then you're like, all right, I still have that goal, hit the target no matter what. I actually love that Cardone thing, he talks about attain the target, and I just love that saying. It's like, all right, the next day you just take the emotion out. You need to keep your your goal right in front of you and just hit it till you get it,
Right. And I think that's very important, this sort of reinforcement of the goals, because when I failed to follow my goals, you were speaking about your tiny goals for each day and your big goals. I'm calling them my massive goals. So those massive goals are goals for 1 year. And then I've got some goals per each quarter. And then I've got some goals for each week, and then maybe daily. But that's where I was slacking. So the problem is, if you're slacking in doing your weekly or daily goals, then you can never reach those massive goals, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't happen. You have to put in the work. That's the thing that nobody tells you when they're speaking about you can become a millionaire just by following this Instagram business in 5 minutes. Yeah, it never happens. I mean,
yeah, I hear you. Because
sorry, but not to be rude or anything, but the person who's getting rich is the person who's selling you that course, because you're paying $100 for his materials, right? But you're not making any money yet because you're not taking any action, right?
Yes. Absolutely agree with you. And it's funny that you said it. I actually started looking at it this way. I was like, every time it's a sale, they're making the sale. But you know what? One thing, the work to success is a lonely road. You know why? Because it means saying no to going out, saying no to, hanging out sometimes and to party time, but actually sitting down and like putting your head down and studying or working on accomplishing that project that you need to accomplish so you can do the things, so you can share, the wealth that you have with your loved ones in the future,
I do. And I think our traditions are pretty much similar. I believe that we're both coming from societies which are maybe a bit more restrictive, and in that sense, from societies which are, let's say, not as open to the idea of hustle and whatever. But I think that, the path that we're paving is our own, and we shouldn't feel bad for saying that there is something that does not serve us, right? What I know and what I experience is a very short amount of time. For example, just to take an example from Uzbekistan, right? And I'm thinking, because I know the city of Samarkand, and I'm hoping I'm pronouncing it right.
Yeah, but perfect.
Thank you. But I know, like, that city is, I believe, 3,000 years old or something like that. So the people who live there got so much ancient knowledge, and the traditions, they are there for a reason. Like, we needed those traditions in order to live a better life. But maybe some of them are not useful for us right now in the moment. So I think each person should just take what serves him or her. And then, we shouldn't feel bad for doing things differently, right? So I know this is just reaching another tangent, but I just wanted to point this out.
Yeah,
anyway,
I agree with you.
I'm thinking, because we spoke about the hustle and the bustle and how we should always work hard for things. I'm thinking, because I know you're big on this idea as well. I know about your previous projects, and I know what you did to try and help the community, and I know that you're really passionate about it. That's the thing. So please, if you want to share a bit of your passion with regards to that, how do you, because you're doing the data analysis part, you're also nesting it with maybe some other side hustles, and how do you nestle those with giving back to the community as well?
Yes, and actually, you're right. So I'm in my full-time job. I also do real estate on the side. I just, tried my entrepreneurship kind of like, I started this a couple of years ago. And then I've also kind of always been into connecting with people and helping. Like previously, I did the Big Sister. I was a Big Sister for a couple of years and actually reconnected with my, it's a Big Sister, Big Brother Association. I'm not sure if you ever heard of them, but you come as a mentor to children from anywhere from 8 to teenager that kind of grew up in less advantaged communities. So I was a Big Sister to this little girl who's now 15 basically, and we just got like reconnected. But also I volunteered at the homeless shelter as well, like once a week. And the way I see this, I don't know, it just feels natural to me, feels right to me. And it doesn't have to be, and for everyone who's listening, I think it doesn't have to be like, you don't have to really go and volunteer at a certain organization, or help out. It's help out your neighbor. Doesn't matter. It's help out your family member, your aunts and uncles and your parents,
Yeah.
So it's just connecting. It does not have to be this big thing, it could just be little things, or it could be someone that you talk to, like homeless on the street, just talk to them, or like, I think, I've done that a couple of times there. I also have done it, like, if you see someone on the street asking for help, don't pass by, just stop and ask them. And they might be truly the person, that really truly needs your help, and actually that happened to me. So lady really needed help and she didn't speak English. So either, because sometimes we just think, like her English wasn't good, she got lost. And what if this is somebody's mom and this or somebody's grandma? They're just like, tried to step outside. And I just to me, every time when I see older people and kids, it's like, I grew up in such a big family in Uzbekistan. Again, as I mentioned, I have, 18 first cousins and I have like 10 uncles and aunts, and my grandparents. So I just grew up with so much love and like doors never close and you have neighbors coming in. So it's like very natural thing for me to do. And my grandma was big on that too. She always helped her neighbors. Every time we had sheep, so every time, they like if there's a holiday, and they would take that meat and pass it along to people that don't have meat, don't eat meat, So I just kind of grew up with that sense of like helping towards each other. So it feels very natural to me. And, something that I feel so happy doing it, and I think the way I see this, I really love, like, I watch these motivational videos. They really inspire me, people that, go and do extra, and Oprah is one of them. And she talks about service, like forget about your brand, forget about, just what people think of you, or just if you put service ahead of you at your job, service, you are there to do the work. You are there to help your your coworkers. You're not there to chit chat and make a small, like waste time. Basically, you are really there. Like, how can I serve you? How can I make your life better? And I think that's the idea that I'm trying to instill in myself and really live by it on a daily basis. And also Tony Robbins talks a lot about that. I love his prayer. In the morning, part of my morning routine, I pray. And I love his saying, God, help me to be a blessing to somebody today. And I just love it. Use me as a blessing and let me enjoy the process. I really, like, he says it with so much passion. You know that, right? He talks about that. Yeah. And I love that line. I love that. I use it every day in my prayers. Like, help me to be a blessing. And really changes how you look at things, really changes your whole energy and how you perceive. So like, service at your work, even if you don't volunteer, I know you have your kids and, you have family members that you give to, but even at work, like if you look at this way, like, how can I serve my job? How can I do this better? How can I serve my coworkers, then how can I serve my family? How can I support you better? I love that question. I heard this question, actually, one of the I went to this conference, recently at Grant Cardone, and this guy that I talked to, he uses that. And like, how can I support you? And I'm like, I love this. Why do I just say that to my friend? How can I support you? How can I be there for you? I just love that phrase, to your friends and family. And I think like having that like service, and it makes it different, and that's your brand. It doesn't have to be your business, and you don't have to, but if you put that in front of you, success will follow, success will come. It would just come naturally to you because you put service ahead, put delivering a product, this is how you develop your brand, who you are.
I completely agree with some of the points that you made, which I think were really great. So one of them was, I believe prayer is something personal. If you choose to do it or not, that's another discussion. But if you pray, instead of to pray for yourself, if you pray for somebody else, I think that's selflessness. I have to support that with all my being. Like, I love it. Also, another thing that I really, really loved when you said it, and I had to fight myself not to interrupt you. You said that it doesn't matter who you're serving. And I think that's very important, because and again, this is some sort of small angle, but if your mother needs help in cleaning the house, but you choose to go and maybe, I don't know, work at a shelter, it's weird to frame it this way, but maybe there is a person who needs help who's closer to you, right? So because we're being taught to go and help, let's say, some different sort of groups, and we tend to neglect other groups that also require our help. Like if there is somebody in our family who can use our support and maybe our financial help. That's the thing. It can be a thing to, let's say, give a homeless person $100, but maybe there is an aunt of yours who needs medication, and she would need, let's say, $200 to buy it that month, and she doesn't know where to get it from. I don't know why, but let's say it like that. I think it's as powerful to help somebody that you know than somebody that you don't know. In therapy, what we do, and that's very interesting, in therapy we encourage people to go help a stranger. I think that's very powerful, because it also, and I think it's powerful in therapy because if you're helping a stranger, you also help yourself fight the idea that people are evil, right? Because you're helping a stranger and you can perceive yourself as being the helper of unknown. It's a very weird and complex thing that we're doing, but we tend to understand the things such as, oh, the world actually is not that bad because I helped that person and they had no interest in helping. We tend to associate service of the people around us with having interests about them. But no, that shouldn't be the case. And and again, this is not framing it negatively. This is basically saying that I'm trying to say that serving the people around us, it's as important as serving the people that we don't know, even if it's not as glorified, because those people love us and those people do the best they can for us. And the best they can for themselves as well, even if they don't do it necessarily for us. For example, if an aunt of mine, because I use the same example, if she is taking care of herself and if she's alive and if I can get to speak to her, that's way better for me than if she would be to die, let's say, the next year, right? I would much rather help her staying alive than anything else, really, right?
Yeah.
I know it's a weird example and maybe I'm pushing things too far, and I can fight with that. It's not a fully fledged and perfect logical argument, but it's an argument that comes from the position of we try to romanticize helping others, and that has some benefits in terms of psychotherapy. But if you're not trying to fight depression, if you're just trying to help and to be of service, try to ask the people around you if they need help.
Yeah, I believe you. I think I completely agree with you. And one of the things that's like, you don't have to go abroad to serve people. This is one of the things, like, we hear, you're so right, romanticizing. I think I can agree, because in certain times, like, you don't need to go to, like, abroad to Africa, and serve. You have people next to you here that need help. Like, help somebody that's next to you, like, that's right there in front of you. Ask them, are you doing okay? Do you need any help? Do you want me to talk to you? Like, again, your friends, your neighbors. Maybe you have a friend who's a single mom. Like, I have a friend who's a single mom, and it's so tough for her, and she's also immigrant, so it's even twice hard because she doesn't have anybody, she's raising her kid on her own, like, doesn't speak a good language, and she needs help. So maybe, like, just go to the people that really need your help. Ask. You don't need to go big. You just someone next to you. And I love, like, how you said your aunt, your uncles, and but I understand there are certain people that can take care of themselves. They can afford help. Like, I get it in that sense, right? But there are people that really, really need your help, and you just can be there for them. It doesn't have to be anything big. It just could be an even small thing, just even seeing a person, just smiling at them and just being kind, being present when you talk to them. Even that is big,
It's the gift of your time. I mean, that's the biggest gift that you can give anybody. Like, the gift of your time. And I'm just gonna brush really fast on this idea, and then I want to ask you something. But it goes the same in relationships as well. Like, the best thing that you can give your partner is the gift of your time. And that's, I think that's the bottom line. And if the other person doesn't treat you well, I think you just you have to remove yourself from that conversation. And, but yeah, because you were saying about helping others and helping themselves, I actually have this question that I want to ask all of the people that come to this podcast. And this question is, what book would you recommend to help people with their personal growth or to become better in relationships? Actually, a book that can actually influence their life.
Ooh, I love one book. So, okay, there's so many books that I love, but I love this one. It's a recent one. It's Code to Extraordinary Mind. I'm going to be a little different. I know How to Win Friends and Influence People is a great one, but I'm going to introduce something new. And it's The Code to Extraordinary Mind. I absolutely love that book. It's by Vishen Lakwani. I hope I'm saying his name correctly. But he's also the founder of Mind Valley, and that's something that meditation is a new thing that I'm practicing. And he has the whole free meditation. It's an app. It's absolutely amazing. But why I love this book, he actually talks about healing a lot in his book, and also, like, a couple of strategies that he implements in his family, how he built himself. And one of the things that I love, it's like, we talk about hustle and we talk about working hard, but sometimes it comes at the expense of, not being there for our family members, not being there for our loved ones, and just being tired and sometimes cranky and all that, and not being our best self, is like, Gary Vaynerchuk always like work. So I really love Vishen's perspective on that. He talks about Pareto Law, like 80-20, actually, like, working smart instead of hard, not working at expense of, worse relationships between your loved ones, but actually, like, working smart so your relationship does not suffer from it, and you actually become a better person as well. Like, looking at your intuition, really tuning in, like, he uses meditation to tuning in for his right move, to take a right move to the right direction. I really love that, and do more focused actions, more focused, apply more focused strategies as well in accomplishing your goals. I really love that. So I recommend. Another piece that he talks about in his book is he does this thing with his son, which I absolutely loved, and actually he implements that in his meditation as well. Is like, he asks his son, what did you love about yourself today? And I just, like, when I have kids, I would love to implement that on a daily basis. It's like, what did you love about yourself today? Like, so he gives opportunity for his son to be proud of who he is, to point out like a positive things at the end of the day that he loved. Like, he helped a friend, or, he did really good at the math school, or he really danced for this song that he really loved, and he treated somebody with kindness. I just absolutely love that. And he, just, and then kind of like using that and then asking ourselves on a daily basis, what do I love about myself? It really helps to kind of like, look at these positive things and then strengthen them instead of like, trying to like focus on kind of negative parts of yourself, So he focuses on basically, make yourself feel good, think of it as if it's real, and then your mind cannot tell the difference,
I understand where this is coming from, and I understand the whole idea of how powerful your mind is in putting you in the right place. But that's not everything. That's the issue that I have with the law of attraction. So the law of attraction without any action, it's just voodoo magic. So saying that, oh my God, I'm gonna get 100 million by tomorrow, and just repeating this over and over again, it's delusional.
Absolutely.
There is this limit, right? There is this very, very thin line between those two ideas. And if you don't have the mental side sorted, you're going to have a hard time. And I completely agree with you. I just wanted to say that I just wanted to insert this small caveat that it's, well, this is, again, as you're saying, this is 80% of the thing. Like getting your mind on track is 80% of the things that you have to do, but 20% is actually going out there and implementing certain things, because that's very important as well. Right. So
yeah, completely agree with you. I absolutely agree. So it's not just sitting there and like, oh, I'm going to imagine things. No, like it's taking the action. I'm going to imagine it as it's happening. Tony Robbins talks about this a lot. He talks about imagine as if you already have it, but then take massive action as if already happened. He talks about a lot, like massive action. So absolutely agree. You can't just sit and like, oh, this. No, you take the massive action as if already happened, but you visualize, but you also kind of boost it together with visualization as if already happened.
Yeah, I completely agree. That's the thing. I just wanted to add this so that, because people might be listening and they maybe it's the first time when they're hearing about this, and they maybe go into a very skeptical position, because I know if somebody would have told me when I was 15 or 16, things like this, I would go something like, yeah, you're wrong. My life is perfect. Let me play some World of Warcraft. Like, honestly, that would have been my train of thought. But I think it's very, very powerful to realize that people are coming from different positions. Not everybody's on the same level. We're at different, and yes, I'm using the word level as, thinking of a video game. Maybe I'm at level 10 in life and somebody's at level 15. but those levels they're not on the same frame, because my level 10 is different from his level 10 or her level 10, because we want to achieve different things and we have different paths. And like, there are so many things in our environment that shape us that we cannot be identical. So I would really love to close this, because I love this discussion, and I would love to close this by asking you, what's the one single advice that you wish you were given, or that you were given? If there would be one thing that you would love to teach your children. And actually, as I was speaking this, there was this couple outside with two small kids, and they are so happy, and you can see the dynamic. Like, the kids go in front of them and they play, and when they feel slightly unsafe, they go back to their parents for reassurance and for love, and that's very important. So I was thinking, like, if there was any one single advice that you could say to your future children, let's say, what would that be?
I think it would be you are enough. I really love that concept. I think being authentic of who you are, and accepting and embracing that fully, and knowing that you're enough and your authenticity, I hope I say that word correctly, but being authentic of who you are and feeling enough as who you are. I think it's very important, and I'm learning about this concept. Again, it's from Richard. I think it is, I find a lot of people, for example,
you would see a lot of worry and anxiety comes in from trying to be somebody that you're not, constantly overthinking or doubting yourself. But I think if you embrace of who you are and stay authentic to your true colors will just shine. You would be just the best you would treat people with so much kindness and love, because your face will light up all the time, because you'll be happy. Like, those little kids, how little kids are. You can see little kids, like at the stores, they will hear the music and they will start dancing and doing like funny moves, and they have smile on their face, and they just absolutely like enjoying themselves. And I just love that, and I think as we become adults, all of a sudden we start judging ourselves. Oh, we said the wrong thing, or we didn't act a certain way, we don't look a certain way, we don't do things a certain way, and
it's all in our head. It's all in our head.
Yes, exactly. It's all in our head. And I think, I think there's even the book that talks about, that like the facial expression, if somebody is like has a kind of sad face on, sad, like a face on lines, it's all about like what's inner thoughts, like inner conflicts that they have, but if somebody has like a smile and a youthful presence, it's just because they're like content with who they are. And, it comes with the peace, and they much more, they're kind of in the flow, everything comes in balance. Because they love who they are and they think that they're enough. And I just absolutely love people that are like embrace themselves,
And it affects your physiology. And I want to end this by saying, like, what I would be doing. You said a bit earlier about rejections and about interviews. So when I would had a new interview, for 2 or 3 minutes before that, I would just sit up and smile like an idiot. And
I love
that's
it.
Like, yeah, because if and every time when I'm going to speak with somebody, it's a habit already. Now each time when I'm phoning a number and I hear it dialing, I'm starting smiling, and you can sense that from the voice of the person, right? Because you can see when somebody's tired. Yeah, come on, just let's get over with this, blah, blah, blah. Or you can, it's not even about the tone, because when I said this, I changed my tone. But just through smiling, the way that the words sound, because, the resonance of your mouth, basically it's different because you're changing the shape of your mouth, right? It's different. So I do agree with it. It had so many things have to do with your mindset. And I think that's a really powerful statement to end on. I think the whole idea that you are enough and you are loved, right? I think even though you don't feel that you are loved at a certain moment, there is somebody there who loves you.
Yes.
Or at least you love yourself. Like each person, no matter what, has at least one person that loves him or herself.
Yeah.
And then if you believe in the idea of God, you can say that, hey, you already got 2 people loving you. You have God and yourself. And then you can add to that list, right?
Yes.
So
I love it. And Louis Hay talks about that too. You can just be your own parent. Like you love your inner child, just love them. Like if you feel down, just see that little you, like, that little cute you, and just absolutely like feel that, like give that big hug to yourself, and I think it's very good, because when you love yourself, you love others, because, you don't have that kind of like agitation or like hurt. You just, you eliminate happiness and acceptance of yourself.
I agree. And I know it shouldn't be an incentive, but a person who's happy and a person who you can feel is in the right place, it's so much more attractive to become your friend, right? It's, again, this comes back to how to win friends and influence people. But anyway, I think that if you want to become a person who is in generally more loved, you have to love first, and you have to come from this position of, hey, I'm loving everybody, and if I don't get my love back, you know what, I'm gonna get it from somewhere else. No, I'm serious, because I can say that I'm giving so much love to my friend John, right? But my friend John doesn't give my love back. But guess what? My friend Annie, she's giving me love. And I'm not maybe giving her that much. So somehow this balances out. I know it's weird, but I think each one of us experiences love on a daily basis, and like maybe we're not necessarily very aware of it.
Yes, absolutely.
So I mean, this was insanely fun. I loved every second of it. And thank you again for being here with me and for recording this. And I want to say that I really appreciate how patient you were, because nobody's gonna know this, but we had to go back and record some things because the connection got cut a few times over and over again. So thank you so much for going through with this episode. It's been a total blast, and maybe we're gonna do one again soon.
Thank you so much. No, thank you, Vix. Thank you for having me. I had so much, it was so good. First, I was a little bit nervous, but this is like two people chatting, two great friends connecting and talking about, things that they're passionate about. I thank you.
It's just like catching up. So
yes, I love it. Thank you.
I hope the people got something of value from what we spoke. I know, again, it's maybe hard to follow all of the ideas, and maybe you agree with some and you disagree with some, but take what you feel they're useful and take what you feel it helps you. And if anything helped you, please feel free to comment on this, come back to us, tell us what you loved about it, tell us what maybe you wanted us to touch on, or maybe we didn't explain well, or anything that you feel you can share with the other people that are maybe watching or listening to this. And it's been a massive pleasure to record this episode with my good friend Zulfiya. And again, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. Bye.
Goodbye.